Hey everyone. So when I was looking at the list of registrants for today, I kind of took note of everyone's interests, things like that. So as we're going through the talk today, I'll just familiarize you with the biology department, the pre-health programs, some of the pre-professional programs, talk about what we do, the general layout of how your major will look as you're on campus. And then really, I want it to be more of a question and answer session where we talk about the things you want to talk about and talk about the things that you're curious about. So I've invited Becky and Chelsea today because they're in the thick of it right now. They're both seniors getting ready to graduate, both pre-med students. So we can talk about the things that they've done to prepare, how it looks, what to expect as you're going through the same situations. I also attended Augustana, but I graduated quite a while ago, so it's probably better to have current students whose experiences may be a little more current than mine. So when we think about biology as a major, as a department, we have a very broadly trained group of faculty, and it's very interesting given that we're such a small school, but we have individuals, trained microbiologists, geneticists, cell biologists, physiologists, anatomists, all of these people teaching your courses in their field of specialty. So as you're preparing for your future fields, know that you'll be trained by these individuals who really know their stuff. So I think that's very important to point out right away. The other thing I like to think about is that we're really an open and accessible faculty. So you'll get to know us. We will know you, we'll talk to you, even in the cafeteria, wherever it will be, whether you want us to or not, we'll say hi. I know about Becky, I know about Chelsea, I know the things they do in their spare time. And those are all really important aspects because eventually you'll need letters of recommendation, you'll need advice, all of these things. So the better that we know you, the better we are prepared to offer you these different sets of things that you may need going forward. And when you're in our building, Hanson Hall of Science, the faculty are all in that building. There's a study area where a lot of the students sit, including Becky and Chelsea, a lot of the time. And when they're doing their problem sets or working on homework and they have a question, they can just run into our offices. Our doors are open. You can come in, you can ask us questions. We'll talk about the problems, walk you through them. Or if you're just curious about life or want to know, hey, what should I do this summer as an experience, we can talk to you about all of those things as well. So I really want to stress that I think when you're here, it sounds sort of cheesy, but you are kind of family. Like we all look out for each other. We will care about you. We'll meet with you whenever you need to meet. Even now in the current situation, I've been meeting with people over Google Hangouts to discuss life and things, preparation for the future, whatever they're doing, MCAT applications, whatever it is. We've been talking through those things because it's still nice to see a familiar face, even if it's over your computer screen. Becky and Chelsea, I'll let you two introduce yourselves and then we can kind of open this up, I think, to the group and just run it as a big Q&A.
Hi, do you want to go?
Oh, shoot. So I'm Chelsea. I'm a senior bio and Spanish double major with a minor in biochemistry. I'm on the pre-med track right now studying for the MCAT. And at school, I was a part of many different volunteer groups. I volunteered at the local hospitals in the emergency department, and I volunteered teaching ESL classes to Spanish speakers. I was also a part of the varsity swim team. And I had 2 clinical shadowing internships at the hospitals around here.
My name is Becky. I'm a senior majoring in biology and neuroscience on the pre-med track as well. On campus, I'm involved in the equestrian team and I played the flute in orchestra. And then outside of school, I had a volunteering internship with palliative care and hospice. Volunteered at the hospital my first 2 years of college. And then like Chelsea, I've had a couple of clinical internships in the field of cardiology and emergency medicine.
Yeah. All right, so as we're thinking about preparations and going through the majors, so Becky and Chelsea are on the pre-med track, But it really doesn't matter if you're on the pre-med track or a pre-vet track or a physical therapy track. Most students will start out the same way. So all of our students will take a year of general chemistry along with a year of general biology and genetics. We consider those courses sort of the core of the biology major. And then as you start preparing for these different pre-professional tracks or career tracks, that's where you'll start taking your upper level elective courses that will then meet the requirements for the prerequisites for medical school or physical therapy or vet school, or just things that are interesting to you as you prepare to join the workforce. So as you're thinking about that, you can start thinking about the types of questions you have as you're taking courses. Sometimes I have students who will start taking courses and go, oh, I didn't even know that was a possibility. And then that opens their eyes to a whole new set of outcomes that they hadn't even thought about before. Where I had a pre-vet student who, you know, was completely set on doing vet work and then took cell biology and microbiology and genetics. And now I think she's in her 4th year of her PhD program in microbial genetics. So as we do these things, it's interesting that we can, you know, you start seeing new things and just opening your eyes to a new world that you didn't think happened before. All right, I see some chat questions coming in. When would you recommend that one would start seeking internships? Really, internships, I think if you're a business major, something like that, internships become very vitally important to get in that field. For us, I usually emphasize shadowing. So I think Becky and Chelsea have done quite a bit of shadowing. They have also done an internship, but for pre-med or physician assistant or physical therapy, a lot of these graduate programs will have requirements for shadowing hours, observation hours. So when we think about internship, that's for credit. We could register at a 0 credit internship, but I don't want to get in all the nuts and bolts of that. But typically we think of that as 4 credit college coursework, whereas a lot of these programs simply want to know, are you aware of what you're getting yourself into? So I have a lot of students who want to do physical therapy because they've been athletes and were injured and had something happen to them and they've gone to physical therapy. That's a great entry to the program, but these physical therapy schools want to know that you know that this is a broader field than that. There's inpatient and outpatient, and you may work with geriatric populations. So they really just want you to know what you're getting yourself into. But really, as soon as you can, start seeking out those opportunities as soon as you can. Next question, do you recommend a gap year? That's another one where it's individual, it's to the individual. When we look at medical school, when we talk to the admissions people at medical schools and get some of the data, if you look at a medical program, the average age of a first-year medical student is somewhere between 24 and 25 years old. So most likely, yeah, there'll probably be some gap years in there. We have students who finish Augustana, apply directly, and go straight through in that, you know, next year start medical school. We also have a good number of students who will take 1 or more gap years. We recently attended an advising conference at the University of Iowa Medical School. They had 5 current medical students on their panel. 4 of the 5 had taken 1 or more gap years. The 5th one, who didn't, kind of wish she had. But it really does come down to a personal choice at that level. And that's where academic advising comes in, where we will talk to you, we'll talk about life. What are you doing? What are you hoping to accomplish? Those sorts of things. And in that gap year, I think the other pre-med advisor and I really just stress, try to find a goal that you want to accomplish or a gap that you want to fill. Do something that you think will improve your application status. Don't just fill time. Actually really think about something that you want to accomplish, some sort of skill you want to develop, so that you have that to talk about in those interviews. Let's see, pre-optometry and kinesiology. When we get to really nuts and bolts classes like that, I can answer those sorts of things. You could actually just send me an email and I could give you information like that, because I'd have to look up and really map those things out. We could do majors and minors. For a lot of the programs, even for medical school, something like that, you could be a history major as long as you meet the prerequisite courses. Most people fall into these science majors because they've taken so much science, and that just seems to be the most direct route to get it done. But I would have to do the pre-optometry and kinesiology question. I'd have to map that one out. There's an MCAT question and a DAT question. So I'll let the students talk about that. So Chelsea and Becky, you can talk about that. We don't do any formal MCAT test prep or anything like that. So do you two want to talk about MCAT prep?
Yeah, so for the MCAT, you'll take like all the classes that you need for it here at Augie. So biology, Gen Chem, Orgo, physics, psych, all that stuff. And then as far as like studying for the MCAT, that's kind of like more so on you. Of course, there's resources here like your advisors that will help you in telling you like what to expect on the exam and how to prepare for it. But for Chelsea and I, we kind of just self-studied for it. And then found like while studying for it, I knew a lot of the information from the classes that I took at Augie. So I was definitely prepared content-wise. Kind of just like figuring out the format of the exam and the types of questions that they ask is a whole nother ballgame. You'll have to end up studying. But your advisors will have plenty of resources for you to utilize and knowing how to study for that. But definitely Augie prepared me for like the content. I just had to learn how to take the test itself.
It's pretty cool going back to the idea of all of our professors being super approachable and open. I can send my Gen Chem professor from 3 years ago a question like, hey, can you review this one topic from Gen Chem with me real quick? And like you can always show up at past professors' doors if you forgot something or something that you like initially struggled with. So that's been pretty cool. Like just because I'm not in the class anymore, we can still use them as a resource for the material.
All right, and even when I've sort of changed my exam format in the last few years. So on my most recent genetics exam, a lot of my multiple choice questions were in fact out of MCAT test prep books because they do test you on the topics that we're covering in class. The thing you have to get used to with MCAT or DAT or any of these standardized tests is that they throw a lot of distractors at you, a lot of information where you go, oh, I know all of these topics and they're really important, but you really have to focus on the question that's being asked because often it's a simple question, but they've just thrown a lot of information at you to make your mind start swirling around a bit. All right, Liesel is interested in pairing kinesiology and biology as double major. Yep, that would work well. I have a number of students now who are looking at different careers that would work well with both of these fields. So yes, that's totally an opportunity that you could take and that they would work well together. Karina, what are other options for students that don't plan to go into the medical field or any kind? So sorry, Karina, I will lose it, but you say like teaching. Are you thinking like high school? Or are you thinking like, I want to go get a PhD and teach at a college level?
I'm thinking more college, but I'm not sure.
Sure. And we have students who do that as well. I'm actually one of them. I went to Augustana, finished up, and came back. And it's really about interest. So I know a lot of the students in the list, and I geared this a bit towards pre-health, but as you're going through, you'll take that year of general chemistry, the year of general biology, and a semester of genetics. At that point going forward, you'll be paired with an academic advisor who shares interests that you share. And as you're taking those courses, we're hoping that you really start to find those passions, start to find those things that interest you. And then we can start kind of taking those paths with the elective courses you have to round out your major, and then any other supplementary things. So for graduate school, I also took organic chemistry, I took physics, I took some of these other courses as well, statistics, things like that would be useful later. So in academic advising, we can really sit down and talk about how that process goes. When I think about academic advising at Augustana, it's not just, hey, what classes are you gonna take? Good, those look good, let's do that. That's really not the least of my concerns, but that's kind of an expectation. We know what's expected of us. What I want to do is talk with you about what are you doing? Why are you doing that? What are you hoping to get out of it? How does that fit into your future goals? And then we establish those future goals, figure out what are those things that you want to do. And then as we're going through, your program's moldable. Like we can, piece these different electives together to kind of try to figure out what it is that you want to do and then get you there to that point. So yes, and we have students who do all sorts of things. It's just the vast majority in this panel were tended to check the pre-professional box, so I went that route. So I apologize for that. Is it Raya? What is the past acceptance rate into medical school from Augustana? We keep a 5-year running average. Our current average is somewhere around 66% acceptance rate into medical school. When we look at the national average, it's about 42%, somewhere in that range. When we look at all of our pre-professional programs, we're typically 20+% above the national averages for acceptance rates into those programs. Level of success for students on the MCAT, variable. We keep track of the range, and the MCAT is not the only indicator of success. I'm one of the pre-med advisors, and I have a colleague who's also pre-med advisor. He actually keeps track of that spreadsheet where he has the science GPA, the non-science GPA, the MCAT score. He's got all of these different factors, the hours, the things that you've done, where we can tell you as you're going through, based on our past success, students with this GPA, with this MCAT score, have a high likelihood of success at gaining admittance to medical school, or here are some areas where you need to improve. It's really hard to take a blanket statement because we have students who are super successful on the MCAT, and we've had students who haven't done as well as they'd wanted to. And it's very hard to track that and gauge that on an individual level because, as you heard from Chelsea and Becky, you have to study for it. No matter how good your preparation is in courses, you have to bring it all together because that MCAT is testing basically everything you've done in 3 years, your first 3 years of college, and it all comes back and it's on one exam. What are some, let's see, Raya again, what are some popular majors for pre-medical students? We have a pre-med major that I kind of like to say puts a bow around everything. So here's all of these are all of the courses, the prerequisite courses required for admittance to medical school, kind of puts a bow on it. A number of the students will be biology majors if they have an interest in biology. We have a number of students who are biochemistry majors because they have an interest in chemistry and then go down that route. I would say between pre-med biology and biochemistry, that would make up the majority of the pre-med students. But as I was saying before, you could major in almost anything as long as you hit the prerequisite courses necessary for admittance to medical school and to prepare you for that in MCAT. All right, Caitlin wants to study pre-optometry as well as do the 3-4 program. I would have to look specifically at that program for a GPA requirement. The best that you can do, I know that's a generic answer, but you want to do as well as you can do. It's a very competitive program. Professors have, flexible office hours. I think we all try to be flexible. At the beginning of each semester, I will say, I think these will be my office hours, and I'll put that on the syllabus, but I always put in the note, or other times. And you can just reach out to me, schedule a meeting. I'm in my office most of the day when I'm not in classes. So if you need a time that doesn't fit with my scheduled office hours, then yeah, we're pretty flexible. And I think most of my colleagues will do that as well. And you typically go in early every day. And that will sort of depend on each professor, what time they're in their office, when they get there, what their class schedule is for that day. So that will all just depend. Let's see, Madison wonders, how rigorous is the pre-med workload? I'll just give that back to the students. Becky, you go first, and then Chelsea. How rigorous is pre-med? Maybe.
Sorry. I would say it's definitely difficult only because you're in pretty hard science classes, but it's definitely doable for anyone. So like honestly in high school, I kind of struggled a bit more in science classes. So I thought, and I knew I wanted to do pre-med, but I was kind of scared because if I'm struggling in high school, how am I going to make it through pre-med at college. But honestly, the amount of support you receive from your professors and your friends makes it totally manageable. Like for example, like organic chemistry was really, really hard for me. But my professor set up weekly times where I could meet with him in his office for like an hour, and he would answer absolutely every single question that I had, and he would go over the week's material with me. So that helped me so much. Plus I had like a bunch of study groups with my friends. And if you're like pre-med or really pre-health in general, you take like most of your classes with the same people. So you really get to know each other, and the class sizes are pretty small. So it helps that you kind of have like that built-in support system with your friends and also with professors. So yeah, it's hard, but honestly, I think any college classes you're going to take are going to be hard, but it's definitely doable, especially with the support that you'll receive from your teachers and your friends.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. It's definitely harder compared to high school and everything, but it's not impossible. And it's more just that like there's a lot of information being given to you, and you maybe don't have like required daily homework assignments like you did in high school. So just kind of learning how to deal with this material and learning how to study again in this new environment was probably the hardest part for me. And I also, yeah, I never really struggled too hard in school before college. So adjusting to the level of difficulty of material wasn't bad, but it was more like deciding my schedules for studying and like recognizing that I need to put work into it now, but it's definitely doable.
All right, the next question is from Clemencia. When should you start studying for the MCAT? I'm going to give you my professor answer that says from day one, because all of these courses that you're taking, especially in these first 3 years, if you're on the pre-med track, will show up. So as you're taking Gen Chem, there will be a general chemistry section. As you're taking general biology, there'll be a general biology section. As you're taking Psych 100, there's a behavioral health section. So all of these things will show up. So what I encourage my students to do, and I tell them in advising, is there's a difference between succeeding in the course and just earning an A and getting through it versus actually learning the material. And I encourage my students to actually try to learn the material, really, really sit down with it, struggle with it, think through it so that you retain it going forward. Because maybe you've had that psych course or that sociology or anthropology course in your first year. Well, in the summer of your junior year, you still need to retain and recall that information. So really try to find ways to engage with it and learn it and really let it sink in. But I think for most students in that year before, so sometime throughout that junior year is when they're really buying the MCAT prep books, taking the courses, doing those sorts of things. And I'll let the two students kind of give you their background as well.
Okay, so I started studying for the MCAT I think it was like last early spring, because I planned to take it at the end of May. And so I did take it at the end of May, and I didn't get the score that I hoped I would get. So I'm actually studying to take it again right now. And my date was actually canceled because of COVID, so I don't know when I'm going to take it. But I would say like a lot of people will take it this like around May, June, after their junior year. But for a lot of people take it twice too, and it kind of depends on if you're taking a gap year. So originally I didn't want to take a gap year, but now that's my current plan. So anytime really after your junior year, after your senior year, or if you want to take 2 gap years, you can kind of just take it with whatever plans for the future you have. But typically I feel like people take it the summer after their junior year, because by then you will have taken all your like prereq classes for it.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty common to start studying like at the beginning of your junior year if you're taking it at the end of that year. But also like that's very far in the future, so it's kind of hard to keep yourself motivated. So I feel like I did a lot of just kind of like more general, like relaxed kind of studying, but I really like kick up my studying and daily practicing at least 3 months before my exam. So I'm taking it at the beginning of June this summer. And I really started studying the end of March, I think, beginning of March, end of February more. And that's when I really started like the intense going through the material and doing like so many practice problems every single day. So it's kind of like a gradual thing that you build up through time.
All right, let's see. I have Austin is asking, what medical schools do most Augie pre-med graduates end up going or attending? It really varies. It depends on the student. They go all over. So I don't have my spreadsheets here in front of me at home to give you that list to read off. Normally I just kind of go through and read off that list, but we would have UIC, Iowa, AT Still. I think there's a student at the Medical College of Wisconsin. We have a student at Mayo Clinic. It really just depends on the interest and the programs they're interested in and where they're attending. So don't feel limited. I don't think there's any one particular school that we just send everyone to or pipeline in that regard. It's really all across the country. Let's see. Ramaya, what advice would you give your younger self entering Augustana on a pre-med route? What should you be doing to prepare ourselves in our first year? So I entered Augustana on a pre-med route as a first-year student, realized after shadowing doing those sorts of things that I don't want to hang out with sick people all that often. So switched my gears. I was more interested in how the tests work than whether performing them. So I went on the research route and followed my interest into genetics and molecular biology. But looking back, and I'll let the two students answer as well when I'm finished, but looking back, I would say I barely took a book home in high school. Like high school was pretty easy. I did really well. And I got to Augustana, I'm like, first 2 weeks, life is going pretty well. About week 3, I'm like, oh no, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to study. So I would really encourage you to think about time management and keeping a schedule, because that I think is one of the biggest differences, is that you had a very regimented schedule through most of your academic life. You had classes at certain periods, you'd go all day, then you'd have an activity in the evening, and then everything is really set up for you in that regard, where once you're in college, you're like, I have one class this day. I guess I'll watch movies and play video games, which is my choice, which was a poor choice that I made, instead of studying. Like my friend Matt would go to the library after class and study his notes, and he did really well. And I'm like, what's happening to me? Why am I getting C's? But so I would say really establishing routines and thinking about how you learn best, finding those groups. I think Becky mentioned earlier that you take a lot of these courses. When you start taking these tracks, you'll have similar people in your chemistry course who will be in your organic course, who may be in physics with you. Start making those study groups, really start thinking about interacting with people and really sharing what you're doing and what they're doing as well. So Chelsea, do you have any strategies or advice for your younger self?
Yeah, so along the same lines of study, I'd probably go back in time and like slap myself and say like, you're not above studying. Like just because you understand something in class, like make sure you like know what's going to be on the test and all. Like you can't just walk into a test and expect to get like 100% like in high school. So I tell myself like you're not above studying, like you need to study. And then for like what you should do to prepare yourselves for your first year, I think like just thinking about the transition into college, you know, and like make sure that you are, you know, not necessarily like fitting in, but like you are eating regular meals, you know, you're like making that adjustment like really well and you feel comfortable here and you're making friends, and just like focus on like your whole well-being, not just your academic well-being, like mental health or just like your confidence and stuff. So like not everything about freshman year is about the transition into studying. Like don't forget you're transitioning into living in a new place and living on your own with friends, with roommates, and those changes can be hard. So I think just knowing to be able to deal with that is an important transition and important thing to prepare for your first year.
Um, Add to that, so I totally agree with everything Chelsea just said. And I think for me personally, like an advice I would give myself entering Augie would be that, like, yeah, college is hard and pre-med is hard, but like you can do it, like no matter what. Like a lot of the times I would like do poorly on an assessment or not study because I just like convinced myself that I wasn't smart enough and I couldn't do it. Um, and so that kind of hindered my success in some ways. So I think just recognizing that every single one of you like has the potential to do well. You just have to seek out your resources and seek out help, which is like all over Augie. Like your resources are everywhere. So you just have to learn how to use your resources, and you have to learn like what those resources are. So I'd say like your first year, like get to know all of your professors, get to know those advisors, because they are going to help you so much. And like I didn't really start getting to know my advisors, I'd say, to like my junior year, and I wish I had done that earlier because they've helped me so much, and like my professors in general. So that's kind of something I wish I would have done as prepare yourself for your first year. I would research like different like clubs and organizations or music ensembles or whatever you're interested in and see what those are at Augie. Because like Chelsea was saying, it's like really important to have something outside of school to kind of like immerse yourself in that kind of like life here. Because you can get really overwhelmed if all you're doing is school. So for me, like playing in a music ensemble and going to the barn to ride horses every week really helped me a lot, and it's something that I've really enjoyed. So research those kinds of clubs that you're interested in, look at volunteering opportunities, things like that to kind of prepare yourself to do well.
No, I will agree with both of their statements in that regard as well. I think from the time I went to what's happening now, I think a lot of these resources were there, but I think we're really transparent now, especially in that first semester of your first year. There'll be a number of workshops actually entitled time management or getting along with your roommate or all of these things. And I would take advantage of those. And yes, find those clubs and groups. I know in high school, people are always telling you like, do everything, be involved in everything. Once you get to college, I would say in that first semester, sign up for all the clubs and groups that interest you, but as you're going through them and going to meetings, pick the top 2 that you really like, because we want you to do something, to accomplish something, to really be a part of that group and not just go to 6 meetings a week. Like actually become involved and get those leadership opportunities and do those things, because as you write your personal statements for graduate school, professional school, or even a cover letter, which is essentially your personal statement for work, you'll be able to take those experiences and translate them to whatever it is that you're trying to do in the future. Let's see, Alex asks about gen ed requirements, like the 6 learning perspectives that he saw online. Are there other gen ed classes besides the 6 LPs? Yes. So there are the 6 learning perspectives, and we call them perspectives because we'd like you to look at the world through different perspectives. It's about how do different people with different backgrounds approach problems. How do they view them? What is their perspective? Like, how does an artist approach a problem versus a psychologist versus a biologist or a historian, those sorts of things. So as you're taking these courses across campus, it's that idea of thinking about the world from these different perspectives, getting that liberal arts background. Additionally, we'll have what we call a Q, a quantitative suffix. So you'll take some sort of math course. For most of our students, it's typically statistics, but it could be calculus or something like that, whatever you're interested in. We have G and D suffixes, which are diversity and sort of a global perspective courses. So again, where is your place in the world? How do these things fit? And then depending on your program, where you see yourself heading for a pre-professional program, there may be additional requirements as well that aren't necessarily requirements for you to graduate, but they would be requirements for you to apply to those specific programs. So then we would seek those out. We'd talk about those in academic advising. For David, if for some reason we cannot physically return this fall, what is the plan for lab classes? Still in discussions, David. I would like to know as well. We're working on things. I think we've done a pretty good job this term, given the quick turnaround to go online. I know a number of the lab instructors are going into the labs, taking photos or working through the things, showing the data. So even microbiology still has their unknown project. We're just walking you through the data collection and analysis. I know the organisms to ecosystem class, they're still going through recording each of the lab stations to walk you through those things. So we've done our best with the short turnaround, and as we transition, hopefully we'll be back in the fall, but we will have some sort of contingency at that point. I just can't share with you at this point because it's not all set in stone. Kira, what classes do you suggest first year biology majors to take? Chemistry. You'll take a year of chemistry. That'll be the first thing that you'll sign up for. Probably in that first year, you'll take one of the general biology courses. They're biology 130 and 140, as well as some of those learning perspective courses as you're going through, and you'll start filling out your program evaluation in that way. Amber is interested in radiology. Would Augustana help you go through? So you're thinking radiology as a physician? We'll say yes. So if you were doing a physician, then we would help you gain admittance to medical school, get you prepared for those sorts of things. So when we think about these sorts of pre-professional or professional tracks, sorry, when you're thinking about the professional tracks, you really pick those in medical school. Our goal now is to give you this background information. You need the info in chemistry and organic chemistry and biochemistry. You need the general biology, the genetics, the physiology. You need those sorts of skills in that background to get you into medical school. And once you're in medical school, you'll take your rotations through those different specialties. What would you, let's see, what do you good at if you had chosen to be a biology major pre-vet? Oh, what do you have to be good at? So this is Husam. I would say just apply yourself, do well in your coursework, work well with your peers, start study groups, do all the things that Becky and Chelsea had mentioned as you're going through the program. Mike posted the gen ed requirements. I thank you for that. Let's see, Austin. How hard is it to be an athlete while having a biology major? So I'll do that one first. So I'll let Chelsea talk because Chelsea actually is on the varsity swim team, so she can talk explicitly about that, and then I will add some details after she talks. So Chelsea, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I don't think it's really that hard or as hard as it would seem. Because a lot of it has to do with like adding structure to your daily schedule. So every day I had morning practice and I had afternoon practice. So that gave me something that I could plan into my schedule so that I knew like maybe at noon after my classes, I have to study now because I can't just put it off till later. And it also helps because on the teams, there are a lot of upperclassmen who have like perhaps taken some of the classes that you're in. So if you ever need help, like a lot of them are super friendly. Like they'll explain you a topic like over dinner, you know, or like I'm always giving advice to like the younger bio people on my team about finding internships and stuff like that. We just really like look out for each other and help each other out. And then also a lot of teams do study sessions together. So for my first couple of years on the swim team, we did study sessions every Wednesday night from 8 to 10 p.m. where we all got a room together and did our homework together. And it was just a nice way to like sit and focus with friends, and if upperclassmen are there, they can help you out. So I really think that being an athlete is beneficial. And also you still get to continue with the sport that presumably you love, so that helps with the mental health and being able to focus and be your best self as you're studying. So.
And then Becky, as president of the Equestrian Club, do you have anything to add?
So equestrian is a lot more laid back than like your varsity sports. But I agree with Chelsea, like being like a part of on a sports team, like you definitely have to it forces you kind of to work with time management. It teaches you how to manage your time, because you have to work around like your practice schedule, and like we were away at competition every weekend, and so the weekends are kind of times when a lot of people do their homework. So I was kind of forced to do my homework other times than the weekend. So really, I think being on a sports team really just helps you with your time management and teaches you how to prioritize. So if anything, I feel like it's helpful.
And that's what I was going to add, just from students I've advised to talking to Chelsea and Becky, that the theme seems to come that as long as you're involved in things on campus, that helps to give structure to your days. And then that structure helps you find those pockets of time to study. And you're not kind of floating day to day. You actually have to get things done in a certain time. When you go to the Carver Center, you'll see a lot of banners about our academic All-American achievements. So we have a number of students who qualify to become academic All-Americans. We're in the top 10 in the nation within Division III and all of NCAA. So when you look at the banner, there's Stanford and MIT and Emory, and then Augustana is also on that list. So our student athletes are students first, but also are able to compete in athletics at a high level. But I think in general, they're all very successful. The second half of Austin's question, and I think I've seen this in a couple of other places, but when do most people start applying to medical schools? If you don't plan to take a gap year, and this is for any of the professional schools, it's typically in the summer between your junior and senior year. So as Becky and Chelsea said, you'll probably take your MCAT, or if you're going into another field, the DAT or the GRE or the OAT, any of these exams early in that summer, May to June-ish. And then most of these applications will then open in July. So people will start applying in July between their junior and senior year. I recommend the sooner the better, because you want to have all of that taken care of before you come back for classes in the fall, because you don't want all these application materials, these extra questions, these responses, the things that you have to write to kind of hang over your head as you're starting those fall term classes. So people will really knock out a bunch of that in that summer.
All right. Hey, Troy, I don't want to cut anyone off,
Okay.
but we are just about at our time here. We do have another session coming up after us today, so I want to make sure to give all those students and faculty the chance to get on. I know there were a handful of questions that maybe weren't able to be answered, so we will try to capture those and follow up with each one of you with any of these questions we didn't answer. So where did we leave off here, Dr. Larson?
Let's see. Let's see. It's, have you ever had international students get into med school? So that's
Perfect.
where
All right.
Yeah.
So we'll
follow up on those. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll follow up after that. So a big thank you to both Dr. Larson as well as Chelsea and Becky. Thank you guys so much for being here today. And obviously thank you to all of you students that are here. If you have additional questions after the session, feel free to reach out to your admissions counselor or just the admissions account at augustana.edu. And we will make sure to follow up with Dr. Larson and get you answers.
Yeah, those all fall to me anyway. So I'll send you those email follow-ups as I get them.
All right. Well, thank you all again for being here, and hopefully we will see and talk to you all again soon. Bye-bye.